How can a land so small, so dry, and so endlessly wounded become the spiritual compass for half the world? Israel and Palestine together span just over 27,000 square kilometers, barely the size of Haiti. And yet over 3.5 billion people, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, trace their spiritual roots to this contested ground. There are no great rivers here, no lush jungles, no vast natural resources to command global power. And yet this land is the center of world history, the stage of revelation and rebellion, of divine whispers and human screams, of prophets, martyrs, kings, and forgotten children. Jerusalem alone has been destroyed twice, besieged 23 times, captured and recaptured 44 times, and still it breathes, it sings, it breaks, and believes again. Here, faith is not a comfort, it is a weight. A memory passed down in trembling hands, in worn scriptures, in broken bones. Every street is layered with centuries of longing. Every stone is a witness. So if you came looking for peace, you may not find it in silence. But if you came to feel something sacred, raw, fractured, real, then walk slowly. Let your footsteps carry reverence. Let your eyes read ruins like scripture. And let your soul arrive before you do. This is not a journey through land. It is a quiet confrontation with the divine. Welcome to the land where prayers leave shadows. Chapter 1: Jerusalem, a holy city with wounds. Jerusalem is not a city. It is a scar that shines, worn by centuries, touched by millions, built and broken and rebuilt again. And still it stands both aching and holy. In just under 1 square kilometer, the old city of Jerusalem holds more history, heartbreak, and holiness than most continents. Four quarters, three faiths. One question that never finds peace. The gates do not guard, they invite. Jaffa, Damascus, Zion, Lion's Gate, each one breathes like a mouth that has whispered too many names. Inside time no longer walks forward, it spirals. You'll see a Hasidic Jew in black rushing toward the western wall. a Christian nun kneeling before the stone of anointing, a Muslim boy racing pigeons beneath the golden dome of the rock. And the wind. The wind is not just wind, it's memory in motion. Jerusalem has been the center of the world, the center of war, the center of dreams. The Temple Mount, where Solomon once built a house for God. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where death and resurrection are separated by just a few meters. Al-Aqsa, where the prophet's journey into the heavens began from stone. Over 900,000 people live in modern Jerusalem today. Jews, Muslims, Christians, Armenians, atheists, seekers. And while politics draws borders and walls, the Spirit knows no boundary. Jerusalem does not belong to anyone. It belongs to everyone who has ever prayed and bled. So if you walk here, walk slowly. And listen not for answers, but for the breath of God that still hides between the stones. Chapter 2. The Western Wall, where silent prayers live. It is not tall, not majestic, not even whole. And yet, no place on earth carries more silent prayers than this broken wall. The Western Wall, known in Hebrew as the Kotel, and to many around the world as the Wailing Wall, a name born not of insult, but of mourning. This is all that remains of the Second Temple destroyed by the Romans in the year 70 CE. Once the center of Jewish worship, once the house of the Ark of the Covenant, now only a single stretch of limestone remains. A wall that never speaks, but always listens. Jews from across the world journey here not to see, but to feel, to touch, to weep, to press folded notes into the cracks filled with prayers that no voice dared to speak aloud. More than 12 million notes are placed into the wall each year. Every 6 months, they are gently collected and buried on the Mount of Olives, because even unread prayers deserve to rest. Here, men and women pray on separate sides. Here, ancient rituals live on tefillin tied around arms, Torah scrolls, raised heads, bowed in rhythm. But this is not a museum. It is a living wall, a beating heart of a people who refuse to forget. And beyond religion, it has become something else. A symbol of survival, a place where those who lost homes, nations, families, come to remember that something sacred can still stand. The stones are cold, but the warmth never leaves. Chapter 3. The Path of Jesus and the Cross. In Jerusalem, the streets do not just carry feet. They carry memory. And no path carries more weight than the Via Dolorosa, the Way of Sorrows. This is the road where 2,000 years ago, a man condemned to die walked with wood on his back and silence in his mouth. Jesus of Nazareth, bruised and bleeding, stumbled through narrow alleys beneath stone archways, past crowded marketplaces. Each step, not just forward, but eternal. Today, the Via Dolorosa stretches 600 meters from the site of his trial to the place of his crucifixion, Golgotha. There are 14 stations of the cross, marked by plaques, chapels, or small doorways that pilgrims stop before. Some kneel, some cry, some whisper hymns in broken Latin or forgotten tongues. It is not about remembering history. It is about reliving suffering. At the third station, Jesus falls for the first time. At the sixth, a woman named Veronica wipes the blood and sweat from his face. At the ninth, he falls again. No path in the world is so short and so infinite. It ends at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, a place where stone has witnessed both death and resurrection, where the cross once stood and where the tomb is empty. For Christians, this is not just a journey, it is the spine of their faith, a road of pain and a road of hope. Every year during Holy Week, tens of thousands of pilgrims trace this route, carrying wooden crosses on their shoulders, some barefoot, some weeping. And for a moment, the past and present collapse into one breath, as if the stone itself remembers how to ache. Chapter 4. Gethsemane, where faith trembled. Some places do not speak, they whisper. Just across the Kidron Valley, at the foot of the Mount of Olives, lies a grove of ancient olive trees, twisted, gnarled, older than empires. This is Gethsemane, and here heaven held its breath. On the night before his crucifixion, Jesus came to this garden, not to preach, not to perform miracles, but to pray. Not with thunder, but with trembling. The Gospel of Luke says his sweat fell like drops of blood, the divine breaking under human weight. The trees here today are believed to be among the oldest in the world, over 900 years old. Some perhaps grown from the very roots that once shaded him. They are twisted like pain itself, silent like surrender, strong like faith that doesn't ask to be seen. Beside the garden stands the Church of all nations built over the rock, where Jesus is believed to have knelt in agony. Inside, the ceiling is painted dark, as if night itself was trapped there. Light falls gently on the stone, not to glorify, but to remember. For many, this is the most human moment of the divine story. Not the cross, not the resurrection, but this. The moment where fear and faith sat side by side, and God did not command, he cried. Each year, thousands kneel in this garden. Some come with questions, some come with silence, but all leave with something stirred. Because Gethsemane does not give answers. It teaches how to wait, even when heaven is quiet. Chapter 5. The Sacred Rock of Three Faiths. There are places built by men. And then there are places where men simply surrender to what already is. At the heart of Jerusalem's Temple Mount, a golden dome rises like the sun itself. This is the Dome of the Rock. But beneath the gold lies something older than domes, empires, and walls. A rock, the foundation stone. To Muslims, it is the place from which the Prophet Muhammad ascended into the heavens on his miraculous night journey, Al-Isra wa al-Miraj. To Jews, it is the very point where God began the creation of the world and where Abraham prepared to sacrifice his son. To Christians, it sits in the shadow of prophecy, one rock, three faiths, 1,000 years of longing wrapped in silence. The dome was built in 691 CE, making it one of the oldest existing Islamic structures on Earth. Its golden roof, restored many times, now gleams under the same sun that once scorched prophets and kings. But inside, the mood is not one of grandeur. It is humility, awe, stillness. The air is heavy with reverence. There is no chanting, no preaching, only breath. And beneath the ornate interior, the stone remains exposed, unafraid, untouched. For Muslims, this is the third holiest site in Islam, after Mecca and Medina. But for the world, it is something greater. Proof that faith can rise without weapons, that beauty can hold history, that a rock can lift the sky. Chapter 6. Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Call to Prayer. Before dawn breaks, before the streets awaken, a voice rises clear, ancient, echoing through stone and sky. The call to prayer. It comes from the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Islam's third holiest site, and perhaps its most contested. In Arabic, Al-Aqsa means the farthest. But to millions, it is not far, it is home. This is the place the Prophet Muhammad was said to have reached in a single night riding the winged steed Buraq, before ascending from the rock nearby into the heavens. It is not the golden dome that marks Al-Aqsa. That's a common mistake. Al-Aqsa's true identity is more modest. A silver dome, an arched facade, and a spirit that does not need decoration to shine. Built in 705 CE, Al-Aqsa has stood through earthquakes, fires, crusades, and occupations. It has been rebuilt, desecrated, reclaimed, and rebuilt again. And still, it calls. 5 times a day, the muezzin's voice breaks the silence, not to dominate, but to invite, to remind the living to pause, to bow, to breathe with purpose. Today, Al-Aqsa is not just sacred, it is symbolic of Palestinian identity, of dignity in resistance, of prayers whispered under surveillance, and childhoods growing up between checkpoints. Each stone in its courtyard has felt both barefoot reverence and booted force. And yet, beneath the olive trees, faith still flourishes quietly, defiantly, because Al-Aqsa is not just a mosque, it is a heartbeat, and hearts, no matter how broken, still beat. Chapter 7. The Armenian Quarter. Silent faith in Jerusalem. If Jerusalem is a mosaic of faiths, then the Armenian Quarter is its quietest tile. A flicker in the corner, a flame that has never asked to be seen, only to stay. Tucked behind ancient stone walls, beyond the markets and crowds, lies the smallest of the old city's 4 quarters, the Armenian Quarter. Less than 3,000 Armenians live in Jerusalem today, and yet their presence stretches back over 700 years, making them one of the oldest continuous Christian communities in the world. They arrived not by conquest, but by invitation. In the 4th century, when Armenia became the first nation to adopt Christianity, monks and pilgrims made their way to Jerusalem and stayed. Their world is wrapped in incense and quiet ritual. At the St. James Cathedral, light filters through dusty air like smoke curling upward from prayer. Their chants echo in tones so ancient they feel like memory turned into music. They are craftsmen, printers, keepers of manuscripts, preservers of silence in a city of arguments. The world rarely speaks of them, but perhaps that is the point. Because the Armenians have survived, not by shouting, but by whispering generation to generation. They carry the scars of exile, the weight of genocide, and the dignity of endurance. In a land where everyone claims truth, the Armenians hold something different: presence without noise, faith without pride, roots without conquest. And that is its own kind of miracle. Chapter 8. Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus. Not far from Jerusalem, behind towering walls and tangled roads, lies a city whose name means house of bread, Bethlehem. To the world, it is a Christmas carol, a postcard, a place where snowflakes and shepherds peacefully coexist. But Bethlehem is not soft. This is where, according to Christian tradition, God entered the world not as a king, but as a child. Not in gold, but in swaddling cloth. Not in palaces, but in a stable. This is where Jesus was born. Inside the Church of the Nativity, one must stoop low to enter through the door of humility, a narrow, bowed gateway that forces even the proud to bend. Underneath the altar lies a silver star with 14 points marking the precise spot of his birth. Here, pilgrims weep not for what they lost, but for what was given. A moment when divinity chose poverty, when the infinite made itself small. The church, built in the 4th century by Emperor Constantine, still stands a patchwork of stone candlelight and whispered prayers in every language. Yet outside these walls, another story looms. Since the early 2000s, a massive 8-meter concrete barrier has divided Bethlehem from Jerusalem, cutting through neighborhoods, farmland, and lives. But where walls rise, art speaks. On that gray surface, Banksy's murals bloom: a girl frisking a soldier, a dove in a bulletproof vest, a child peeking through a crack in the wall toward stars. Bethlehem is both a cradle and a cry, a sacred beginning, and a daily reminder of how easily holiness becomes entangled in politics. But even in division, people still gather, still sing, still light candles, for a light that once entered the world quietly through a woman, through pain, through love. Chapter 9. The separation wall and protest through art. Where walls rise, so does resistance in Bethlehem. Concrete does not merely divide land, it divides dreams. Homes on one side, relatives on the other, freedom, somewhere unreachable. But when voices are silenced, paint begins to speak. The separation wall, nearly 8 meters high and over 700 kilometers long, was meant to restrict movement, but it has become one of the world's most unexpected art galleries. A gray giant turned canvas where pain, humor, and rebellion meet. And at the center of it all, Banksy, the anonymous British street artist, first visited Bethlehem in 2005. What he saw was not a war zone, but a place where childhood meets checkpoints and faith meets frustration. Since then, Banksy has returned again and again, not to decorate, but to disrupt. A girl patting down a soldier, a dove in a bulletproof vest, a boy with a ladder climbing toward a crack in the wall where blue sky breaks through. These images do not shout. They unsettle. They challenge narratives. They ask questions no checkpoint can answer, and they've inspired others. Local and international artists now use this wall, not just as protest, but as prayer. Each brushstroke a hymn, each color a refusal to surrender. In 2017, Banksy even opened the walled-off hotel, a real hotel right beside the wall, boasting the worst view in the world. Every room looks out on concrete. Every detail reminds you. You are inside a story that hasn't ended. And yet, Amid despair, there is dignity. In spray cans, in satire, in silent stares, painted onto gray. Bethlehem's walls cannot hold the whole truth, but they hold pieces of it in pigment and poetry, in defiance that refuses to fade. Chapter 10. The Ark of the Covenant, a Lost Mystery. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be carried like faith, like silence, like a wound that becomes sacred. The Ark of the Covenant was more than a golden box. It was a throne without a king, a voice without a mouth, a promise carved into wood, guarded by angels of gold. According to the Hebrew Bible, it held the 2 stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments, a jar of manna, the bread that fell from heaven, and Aaron's rod, which once bloomed with divine authority. But the ark was not just a relic, it was a presence. Wherever it went, victory followed. Wherever it rested, awe descended. It was placed in the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctum of Solomon's temple, where no one could enter but the high priest. And only once a year on Yom Kippur, when the sins of a nation were laid before the mercy of God. And then it disappeared. In 586 BCE, when the Babylonians destroyed the first temple, the ark was taken or hidden or lost. No one truly knows. Not a single confirmed trace has been found. Not in Jerusalem, not in Ethiopia, not in the Vatican, not even in the Desert Scrolls. Yet the ark still lives. Not in stone, but in story, in echoes, in rituals reenacted, in eyes that still search temple ruins with trembling hands. To the faithful, the ark is not lost, just waiting, just hidden, just as powerful in absence as it ever was in glory. Because some things don't vanish. They become longing. Chapter 11. Saba Monastery and Sacred Silence. There are places where silence is a choice, and places where silence is a vow. Tucked into the cliffs of the Judean desert, suspended like a mirage, carved from stone stands, one of the oldest and most mysterious monasteries on earth, Saba. Founded in the 5th century by Saint Sabas, this Greek Orthodox monastery has stood watch for over 500 years. It clings to the cliffside like a secret the desert refused to bury. There is no road, no tour buses, no noise, only wind, stone, and whispered prayer. Inside its fortress-like walls, time dissolves. The rhythm of life is marked not by clocks but by candles, by the turning of psalms, by footsteps on worn stone echoing into the void. Women are not allowed inside. It's not a rejection, but a tradition held so tightly that it cannot be broken. They can only stand on a nearby hilltop, watching from a distance, a reminder that in some sacred spaces, even longing is part of the ritual. The monks here live without luxury, without distractions, without ambition. They wake before dawn. They chant in Byzantine tones. They live not to change the world, but to witness it, quietly. Saba has survived empires, earthquakes, invaders, not because it fought back, but because it knelt deeper. And in today's world of noise, its silence feels radical. It does not seek followers. It seeks stillness, a monastery carved in stone. That teaches us one truth: you do not need to speak to be heard. Chapter 12. Jericho, the world's oldest living city. Most cities are born flourish and fall, but Jericho, it simply endures. Nestled deep in the Judean desert, not far from the Dead Sea, Jericho has seen the sun rise for over 10,000 years. That makes it the oldest continuously inhabited city on Earth. Here time doesn't just pass, it layers from the Stone Age to the Bronze Age, from Israelite kings to Roman roads, from Ottoman walls to modern Palestinian streets. Jericho wears history like breath on stone. Its Arabic name Ariha means fragrant. And true enough, this oasis blooms in defiance, fed by natural springs like Ain Sultan green against the desert's cruel gold. But Jericho is not only ancient, it is sacred. This is the city whose walls fell when Joshua's trumpet sounded, where Zacchaeus climbed a sycamore tree to see Jesus pass by, where desert monks carved faith into caves and prophets wandered barefoot beneath date palms. And yet, despite its holiness, Jericho today is humble. Home to around 20,000 people, mostly Palestinians, living between ruins and rooftops, between heritage and hardship. In the heat, the call to prayer blends with the hum of irrigation pumps. Donkeys pass satellite dishes. Children play where empires once marched. Jericho is not polished. It is dust and dignity, survival without spectacle. It does not ask to be remembered. It just keeps living. Because some cities don't belong to the past. They carry it forward stone by stone, breath by breath. Chapter 13. Masada, a tragic stand against defeat. There are mountains that echo with prayers, and there are cliffs that once shouted and then fell silent forever. Masada is not just a fortress. It is a wound carved into stone. A place where 960 Jewish rebels chose death over surrender to the Romans in the year 73 CE, ending a siege that has since become legend. Perched high above the Judean desert, Masada looks down at the Dead Sea like a sentinel watching over memory itself. The ruins still whisper broken columns, scattered mosaic tiles, the bones of resistance. The Roman ramp, built stone by stone to breach the walls, still remains like a scar that refuses to heal. This is not a tale of victory. It is the cry of a people cornered of mothers who chose to fall with dignity rather than see their children enslaved. According to historian Flavius Josephus, when the Romans broke through, they found silence all had taken their own lives rather than be captured. Today, Masada is a symbol of courage, of despair, of the fragile line between martyrdom and memory. Israeli soldiers still take their oaths here, swearing Masada shall not fall again. In the 21st century, tourists arrive by cable car, snapping photos where tragedy once unfolded. But for those who truly listen, the wind at Masada still carries something deeper, a lesson carved by choice, by resistance, and by the cost of being forgotten. Masada was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2001, recognized for its historic and cultural significance. The site welcomes over 750,000 visitors annually. Chapter 14. Makhtesh Ramon, a desert shaped by time. It's not a crater, not in the way the world imagines. Makhtesh Ramon is a riddle, carved not by fire, but by silence. A geological phenomenon found nowhere else on Earth but in the Negev desert of Israel. 40 kilometers long, 2 kilometers wide, and up to 500 meters deep. It stretches like the wound of an ancient titan. Here, the rocks don't just lie still. They tell stories of tectonic movements that took 200 million years, of colors, ochre, red-yellow layered like forgotten scrolls, of ammonite fossils curled like time's forgotten fingerprints. This is where silence speaks in spirals. And yet, for all its vastness, Makhtesh Ramon is not empty. The ibex walks its edge. The Air Force flies overhead. The small town of Makhtesh Ramon clings to the cliff home to astronomers, mystics, and wanderers. At night, this place becomes the darkest sky in the Middle East, a haven for stargazers, philosophers, and those seeking more than just direction. In 2017, it was declared an international dark sky park, one of only a few in the world. What does it mean to stand where nothing grows but wisdom? To hear wind that once passed over prophets? To see a landscape carved not by water or lava, but by time that refused to speak? Makhtesh Ramon is not just earth turned inside out. It's doubt sculpted into stone. And if you stand long enough, you may hear not answers, but the right questions. Chapter 15. A land of questions and hope. How do you draw borders on a land where memory flows like wind, and every grain of sand has been kissed by both a prayer and a bullet? Israel and Palestine are not just names on a map. They are wounds that never fully close, and lights that never fully go out. From the cliffs of Haifa to the tombs of Hebron, from the vibrant chaos of Tel Aviv to the slow silence of Ramallah, this land is a symphony of contrasts. Every sacred site is also a potential battlefield. Every olive tree carries stories of ancestors and exile. And every child born here inherits not only a name, but a history older than language, heavier than stone. As of 2025, over 14 million people live between the river and the sea. Jews, Muslims, Christians, Druze, atheists, all breathing the same air, all caught in the same sacred paradox: how to live forward when history pulls back. But beyond statistics and strategies, beyond treaties and tanks, there are mothers who just want their sons to come home. Poets who write verses instead of manifestos. Young people who dance to music louder than division. Because here, between ruins and resurrection, the land doesn't answer you. It asks you, will you see us only through the lens of conflict? Or will you dare to see our humanity too? Chapter 16. Makhtesh Ramon, where the sky breathes. There is a place where the sky seems closer than anywhere else on earth. Makhtesh Ramon, a colossal crater in the Negev desert of Israel, is not a meteor scar, nor a volcanic caldera. It is a whisper of geologic time, a masterpiece carved not by violence, but by silence, by water and wind across millions of years. At 40 kilometers long and 2 kilometers deep, this erosion crater, the largest of its kind in the world, is a silent sermon about Earth's capacity to transform itself slowly, beautifully. In 2012, UNESCO declared the region part of the Makhtesh Ramon Biosphere Reserve, recognizing its ecological richness despite the desert harshness. This is where the air is so pure that stargazers and dreamers gather. Astronomers have called it one of the best places on Earth to touch the stars. Here, Bedouin shepherds still trace paths known only to wind and memory, and ibex leap across the cliffs like ancient poems in motion. Makhtesh Ramon is not loud, not lush, not green, but it breathes. And that breath carries stories of resilience, adaptation, and the quiet endurance of beauty. Visitors who come here often find themselves whispering not because they must, but because the landscape teaches reverence. In a land often marked by noise of history, of conflict, of prayer, Makhtesh Ramon invites stillness. To lie beneath its skies is to feel the earth's memory press softly against your skin, and to remember that not all miracles are loud. Some are carved by time, by wind, by wonder. Not every prayer is loud. Some are whispered into the stones. Some are carved into olive trees. Some just hang in the dry air waiting. Here in this land, silence is not emptiness. It is memory. It is longing. It is the weight of generations standing still, while the wind carries away the names that history forgot. Israel and Palestine are not just countries. They are questions, mirrors, wounds that teach. They are the proof that even when language fails, land remembers. And even when walls divide, the sun still touches both sides. And perhaps the holiest thing in this land is not the temples, not the mosques, not the sacred scrolls or the prophecies, but the human being who, despite the centuries of scars, still dares to hope. If this land could speak, it would not shout. It would tell a story. And now, that story is yours to carry. If this story moved you, if the silent strength of this land whispered something to your soul, then don't let it vanish into the scroll of time. Subscribe to Explore the Planet, Fork Travel Documentary, for more journeys where culture breathes, history speaks, and silence tells the truth. Leave a comment, share your thoughts. Because every voice, every story, every connection matters. Let's travel deeper. Let's explore not just the world, but the spirit that moves within it.